Hello students, today's video is on the topic of landforms. We've spent the last week talking about how the Earth gets its shape between plate movements and weathering and erosion, and now we're going to talk about the names for the different shapes that the land takes. There are two ways that geographers decide how landforms are, and one is its shape, and the other is what's around it. So for example, if it has water on three sides or water all around it, that makes it one landform or another. So shape and what's around it. So going forward for the rest of the video, make sure that you have your steads ready to go. Subtitles, and then for each subtitle you're going to have a definition, example, and or detail depending on what you need to write and what you think is important based on what's said for each item. Okay, so make sure that you use your strategy steads with your jot notes. So the first type of landform that we're going to talk about in this video is called a mountain. And you're probably very familiar with mountains. They are tall, peaked landforms with steep sides. So they can either be one mountain, like freestanding, like Mount Kilimanjaro, or they can be in what's called a range or a chain, which is a bunch of mountains in a row, like the Himalaya Mountains or the Rocky Mountains. Those are mountain chains, long stretches of many mountains in a row. The next landform that we're going to talk about is called a peninsula. And a peninsula is a long, thin landform with water on three sides, and then it's attached on its fourth side to a larger piece of land. So I have three examples here, and these are all pictures from space, and that makes it easy for us to see what's going on in each instance. So we'll look at the first one, which is here. This is called the Italian Peninsula, and it's a long, thin piece of land. This is the country of Italy, which is why it's called the Italian Peninsula, and it has water on 1, 2, 3 of its sides, and then on its fourth side it's connected to the rest of Europe. In the next picture we have Florida, the state of Florida, which is a peninsula. It's got water on 1, 2, 3 of its sides, and on its fourth side it's connected to the rest of the United States. The last picture is called the Arabian Peninsula. So this is the peninsula here. Again, it's long and it's not as thin as the Italian or Peninsula or Florida, but it's definitely a little bit more stretched out and longer. So it's this piece here. It's got water on 1, 2, 3 of its sides, and on its fourth side it's connected to the rest of Asia. Another landform is called a valley, and a valley is a V-shaped landform that has an indentation and then steep sides. Valleys can be very large or they can be small, but they're always going to have steep sides, come to a point in the middle like a V, and then go back up on the other side. So an easy trick for valley is V-shaped, so it's actually in the shape of the letter of the name. And there are many valleys around the world. There is the Connecticut River Valley, there's the Chitwan Valley in India, many valleys all over the world. The next landform we're going to talk about is called a desert. And a desert is a hot, dry landform with very little rain or vegetation. And vegetation just means the things that grow there. So very few plants, and the plants that do grow there have to be a certain type that can live without a lot of water. So there are many different deserts around the world. This right here is a picture of the Sonoran Desert, which is in the United States. And this here is a picture of the Sahara Desert, which is in northern Africa. Another term that you might sometimes hear used when we talk about deserts is the term that's used for its climate, which is called arid. Okay, so the word arid is just another way of saying hot and dry, which would refer to a desert's climate. And again, because it's so hot and dry, the dirt usually dries up and becomes more sand-like, which is why in deserts you tend to see a lot of sand, because of its arid climate. So that's just a little bit about deserts. The next landform is called a plain. A plain is a widespread area of flat land. Widespread just means that it can cover a large area. It can go for miles. And the characteristic that a plain has is that it's just flat. It's flat all the way through. Not hilly, not mountainous, just flat. There are plains on every continent. Some examples, the Great Plains in the United States, the Northern European Plain in Europe, and the savanna in Africa is a plain, flat areas of land that can go on for miles. Now we have islands. Islands are small pieces of land with water on all sides. They're completely surrounded by water. So some examples of islands could be the Hawaiian Islands. These right here are close-up pictures from space again of the Hawaiian Islands. Or Japan. Japan is actually made up of 3 big islands and then many smaller islands around it. So they are pieces of land with water all around them. Now a basin is kind of a cool landform. A basin is a bowl-shaped landform that happens around large rivers. So you can't really tell from this picture, but this is a picture of the Congo Basin. The river you see is the Congo River. And what's happening around the river is that a bowl shape has kind of happened to the land that the river has carved out, and that's where the water kind of gathers, creating the river and the flow of the river. So it's a bowl-shaped landform around large rivers. Plateaus are tall landforms with steep sides and flat tops. They're kind of like mountains, only instead of a peak like a mountain, it's flat on the top. So here's a picture of a plateau. You can see that the sides are steep, just like a mountain, but instead of coming to a point at the top, they're flat, and that is a plateau. And finally, we have highlands. Highlands are widespread areas of hilly land. It's kind of like the opposite of a plain. So widespread again means that they can cover large areas, but instead of being flat like a plain, highlands are hillier. They're not mountains, but they're not flat either. It's kind of in between, and they're hilly. So a couple of examples of highlands. There are highlands in Brazil. They're called the Brazilian highlands. There are highlands in Scotland, which is what's being shown here, with some highland cattle. Those are cows that are native to that area. And those are areas in those 2 countries that have large areas of hilly or higher elevation land. So congratulations, you've just watched another video successfully about landforms. And now there are lots of other different kinds of landforms, but these are the ones that we're really going to spend a lot of time talking about as we learn about Africa, Asia, Europe and Russia, and Latin America. Those are the ones that we're going to come into contact with quite a bit throughout the rest of the year. So if you need to watch this video again, please do. Make sure that you have some good DEDs for each one, some definitions, examples, and details about each landform, so that when you come to class tomorrow, we can do our activity together.